America declared war on Spain in April 1898 for a number of reasons, mainly dealing with Cuban independence from Spain. When America declared war, the U.S. Army was very small at that time, about 25,000 officers and men. So to conduct the military campaigns that were going to be necessary in the Spanish-American War, the National Guard of most states was federalized and brought on to active duty. So the same day that Congress declared war, the governor of Wyoming, William Richards, received a telegram from the War Department saying, ordering that Wyoming's contribution would be 1 battalion of infantry that consists of 4 companies. They formed what was called the 1st Wyoming Volunteer Infantry Battalion. And in May 1898, they came down here to Cheyenne for their initial equipping and training. When state military forces were organized back in the 19th century, it was tradition for the state to supply the flag or the unit colors that the men would carry with them in battle. So the state decided we're going to provide a flag to this infantry battalion. And the First Lady of Wyoming, Harriet Richards, pretty much spearheaded the fundraising campaign to purchase this flag. It was kind of unique what she did. She decided that she only wanted donations from the women of Wyoming to provide the funds for this flag. So she sent letters to all the municipalities in Wyoming, to the ladies of those municipalities, requesting that they donate money. But she limited the donation to no more than 10 cents per person. But just in a few weeks, she raised over $2,000 for this flag. So the surrender of Manila pretty much ended the Spanish-American War in the Philippines. The Wyoming Guardsmen that were there remained in the Philippines as a part of the occupation force through the winter of 1898-1899.
Christian Hepp was my great-grandfather. He came from Bavaria, eventually made it to Buffalo with the second Bighorn gold mining expedition. CJ had a signed affidavit from when he was in the Philippines and about them raising the flag, which they thought at the time was the first flag flown over Manila. But for the 1st Wyoming Volunteers, him and another soldier raised the 1st Wyoming Volunteer flag.
In early 1899, the Philippine-American War started, where American forces battled Philippine insurgents that were trying to establish an independent Philippine nation. So throughout the spring and early summer of 1899, the Wyoming troops that were in the Philippines participated in combat actions against Filipino insurgents. Their active duty deployment ended in the summer of 1899, and in August 1899, the battalion returned back to Wyoming, came off federal duty status, and were discharged. At that time, they donated the flag to the Wyoming State Historical Society. Holdings of the Wyoming State Historical Society were transferred here to the State Museum. So that is where the flag has resided ever since. So in the course of the research for this history of the Wyoming Guard that we're putting together, we figured out that the flag was here in the Wyoming State Museum. So we contacted the museum and asked them if they had it. And it's obviously in pretty fragile condition, so a grant had to be put together to conserve and restore it so it can be displayed for future generations to learn about. It was very exciting as a historian to read about historic events and knowing the artifacts that are associated with those events, and then to see that one of those artifacts close up is always a special event to see.
This flag is silk. Like all organic materials, it breaks down over time. Silk in particular is fragile. The dye process and the processing of the silk into the fabric really starts its deterioration from day one. It's breaking down the actual chemical structure of the silk fibers. Then the fact that it's a flag that was used, it was hung, It was carried in battle, it's dirty, it was stored for a long time and without intervention, so that it just starts to fall apart.
We need to keep in mind, again, this flag is made of silk and it was in a tropical environment for the better part of a year. It was soaked on a regular basis, was exposed to extremes of heat and wet and humidity. So I'm sure even back in 1899 when it came back here to Wyoming, it was not in the best of shape.
The goal for the museum, and for me as a conservator for this treatment, is to preserve it and to make it last as long as possible. So the first step in treating this flag was to really remove as much of the surface soiling as possible, because that does accelerate the degradation of the fibers, and it also looks better when it's cleaned up. Large part of what we do is document everything that we do and document the changes. So the goal is not to fool into thinking that it had never been damaged or that it was, like new, but to, preserve it for the duration, improve its appearance. It's all part of a balance.
These sort of artifacts tell the history of Wyoming. It tells the history of the unit. The story that can be told through artifacts is much more personal and much more intimate than what you can just read in a book. You can read about historical events, but then when you see these sort of artifacts that were present at those historical events, it adds a whole new dimension to understanding and learning.
And it'll be wonderful for me to bring my grandson down here and see that flag, and say, your great-great-granddad held that flag, when they were down there. You just got to keep that history going on in your family so it doesn't get lost.
And so that's why it's, I think, so critical for this particular artifact to be conserved the way it's going to be and then displayed here at the museum for future generations to know what the Wyoming's involvement in the Spanish-American War was all about.